Okay, so for project number 2, here we have my mom and dad. I am going to keep notes in regard to their conflict, which is, my dad wants to live on a houseboat and my mom would prefer a on-land address. So here we go. Let's do this thing. Good afternoon to the both of you guys. Welcome to mediation. Are the two of you guys comfortable with this seating arrangement?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm Liz. I will be your mediator today. How can I address the two of you?
Mom?
And Dad.
And Dad. Great. So the purpose of mediation is to give you guys a chance to express the conflict, your needs, and perspectives. My role as the mediator is to help facilitate your guys' communication and help the two of you brainstorm potential resolutions. Now, I want to add in there, if we don't come to a resolution, that's okay. I want to remind you this is a voluntary process. So with that being said, do you two wish to move forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I want to outline the process just briefly before we get started. Mediation is a confidential process. You are free to discuss whatever you want. I want to remind you everyone will get a chance to be heard. I will be taking notes in order to keep the information that you guys disclose organized, and these notes will be destroyed. I am requesting from the both of you that you respect each other's voices and do not interrupt or use foul language. Is there anything you guys would like to add before we begin?
No, thank you.
Perfect. So, who would like to start? You can go ahead.
I'll set it up. My main issue is that my dream has been, after 30 years in our house here in Elmhurst, Illinois, that I would, as our kids move away and become young, successful adults, and we're empty nesters all the way, to live on the water full time on a houseboat or a yacht, and that would be either on Lake Michigan, more than likely to get started here in Chicago, or perhaps in Southwest Michigan.
Sure. So it sounds like what you're saying is you've lived in your current home, the two of you guys, us, for 30 years, and the main issue you kind of have is you maybe want a different change of scenery and kind of explore some new things, and that could be the houseboat.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. What about you?
I would prefer to have a physical address where we could call home, have you and Sam out to later with your families. But I'm totally up for a boat that we could live on and do that in just part of the year, not the whole year. Like, I'd like both, the house and the boat.
Sure. So it sounds like you really need and would enjoy a physical address to allow your grandkids to come back to, as your kids start to have kids of their own. But you're definitely open to the houseboat idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love it. I'd love it, because I'd love to support Dad's dream. I just don't want it to be the only place we have to live.
Yeah.
And my biggest things are that living on a boat full time is like a permanent vacation. It's peaceful, and it's actually cheaper, because if we go from a house, once we remodel and sell our house over the next couple of years and move to a boat full time, it gives us that peaceful, easy vacation like a feeling, and it's actually cheaper, saves us money in the long run.
I personally think the sense of vacation would wear off and it would just become a closed, small place that we're both living in. I think the beauty of a vacation is that it's something different than your normal day to day. So although I think it's very peaceful, I don't know that I could sustain that enjoyment of it over a long term.
Is there anything you want to add?
I think that kind of summarizes our impasse right now. So why don't you go ahead and take the floor and maybe point to some ways that we could come to equilibrium.
Sure. Well, from what I'm hearing from you, Dad or Bill, you have kind of sorted through the financials of this. You have come to the conclusion that it might be a little bit cheaper and more of an economical route for you guys as you guys transition into retirement. As well as the vacation element, you want to kind of live that dream of kind of being in the warm weather with the houseboat and maybe embrace that free-spiritedness about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then Marie, on the other hand, you're totally open to the idea of a houseboat. You think it's a great idea, but I think that what it sounds like is where you're struggling is you want the on-land home, but in terms of the vacation, you treasure that vacation feel that comes when you travel every so often. So you would fear kind of the vacation, aura wearing off.
Yes, yeah, that's true. And I just also come back to I really just want a home base. Like a home base that's solid on land with an address where I get my mail, where my kids come. But then if Dad and I would take the boat and spend 6 months living on it in Florida, absolutely, that would be a dream come true.
So you bring up a good point that can kind of maybe invite other perspectives. She posed 6 months, which on the calendar is half of the year. So what are your thoughts as far as, getting the houseboat while still having the on-land home with the address and just kind of doing it half and half?
I might be open to that to begin with, because when we were recently in Florida over spring break this past March, right before the COVID crisis was official, we did take a half-a-day boat ride on a 42-foot boat on the Intercoastal Waterway in Fort Lauderdale and North Miami, and then the ocean. And although my dream has been to flip the house into let's say at least a 42-foot boat to be ocean bound. In my opinion, 42 is still a little small. Just from that recent experience, I might be willing to split the difference and have the house and start with a smaller boat. I mean, I think I would consider that. It might be a good place to start, and it'd be a starting point.
Sure. Well, with that being said, what are some of your needs that you would need to fulfill in order to honor that half and half, like you're saying?
Well, right now, since we're post-COVID crisis and sort of a little bit into the beginning, maybe now isn't the best time, but money, employment, where you're going to live, climate, those are all considerations. So I think beyond meeting kind of halfway in between on this, have a house and start with a smaller boat, maybe a 24-foot boat that's more of an intercoastal waterway boat, but employment and looking forward to boating, those things all take money. So, you know, you want to make sure that you're in a good position before you take the plunge.
Sure, and those are all valid points. So I want to bring the attention kind of back to you. You mentioned how, I guess the main focus for you is having that home base. But if we kind of look at this situation from a different vantage point, what other needs or interests do you have in terms of the houseboat?
Needs or interests in terms of the houseboat? You mean living on the houseboat?
Sure, whatever kind of that means to you. So if this was a reality, what would you need in order to feel like you are fulfilled too?
The houseboat would do it, and seeing Dad happy would do it. I'd love it. I just don't want to have that be my only home. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to.
The thing is, with a 24 or 25 foot or maybe a 30-foot boat, that's sort of what they call a weekender or cuddy cabin, and it's not really a boat that you can be really comfortable on for a long range trip or even a long weekend. It's more of an overnighter, but it's a starting point, and sometimes it doesn't have, you know, all the facilities like a restroom or a galley, a kitchen to cook. So there's some trade-offs that way. So that term houseboat sort of goes from full-time or extended part-time living to just a weekender. So then you need a slip space or a dock next to your home or in one of the local marinas to have a place to park or tender the boat, moor it, and so then there's some trade-offs like that. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, I would be okay with that. I'd be basically going along with the boat thing because it's your dream and I love you. Would I love a bathroom on it? Yeah, I'd say that's a deal breaker. I would want a bathroom on it, but I don't need anything super fancy. I mean, you set the bar on what you'd want, and I would be happy.
So it sounds like a common theme among the both of you is happiness for one another. You know, that's kind of what you guys want to achieve in fulfilling this vision per se. So kind of now that we've identified some common ground, you would be open to the houseboat. You're not totally closed off to it.
I'm not closed off at all.
Which is great.
Yeah.
And from what I hear, you're flexible with the time that you would want to spend on the water in order to accommodate to some of her needs. So what could this vision moving forward kind of look like for you guys?
Well, first we'd have to get a boat. We'd have to figure out what kind of boat, based on what we could afford, where we're gonna live full-time, whether that's, not full-time rather, but the physical land address, whether it's here, whether it's down somewhere warmer, whether it's up in Michigan, who knows, right? But we'd want it to be an inclusive picture of the boat in the picture, right? Because then, like Dad said, you have things like slips and all that jazz, plus to be somewhere where there would be easy access to water to go on adventures and get down to Florida and park the boat, if that's what you call it.
One of my dreams is to maybe start on a boat house, separate house, and a boat here, and maybe in Southwest Michigan, a place called New Buffalo, and we would take a great loop trip. So beyond maybe you and your brother bringing your young families aboard and spending the day with kids, which would be fun eventually. One of my dreams is to go down the Illinois River and the Mississippi River, and you can go as far as New Orleans or Florida, and they call that trip the Great Loop, and it takes about 2 or 3 weeks, but it's a journey. You know, it's a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah,
It'd be cool.
So question for you, it sounds kind of like you you mentioned you want the easy access to the water from your address,
Ideally.
house on land address,
Yeah.
to then transition into that boat. Question for you, does the geography of the homeland address matter for you, or are you just kind of really adamant about having somewhere to resort back to on land?
Good question. Ideally, like my dream is to have a house on the water with access to the water, like
Yeah.
water view. The reality of that, I don't know, but that would be like my total dream.
Well-
She just made my boat smaller, because now to get the house next to the water in New Buffalo, Michigan, it just made my boat go from this big to this big to this big. So
Oh, yeah,
it's
but
2
can
foot.
you-
It's 2 foot itis in reverse. It's usually supposed to get bigger, and now it just got smaller by another half.
Well, that would be my dream. If it's not on the water, I mean, I don't need a big house. I just want a house that's nice and that would have room for people to come visit and maybe be within walking distance of the water.
Well, if I can just point out something that I've kind of heard in conversation thus far, you both have kind of similar dreams. You want the houseboat, which entails water, and you're flexible to the length in which you spend on the water. You, on the other hand, are totally open to the houseboat, although you do want a house on land, and geographically, Michigan would be a great place to fulfill your homeland with water, as well as you having the boat, and which would then allow you to make that loop that you're talking about.
And I agree with you. When we look at post-COVID here, and let's say within another year or two, as the economy recovers, when we sell our home here in Illinois, outside of Chicago, one idea based on Mom's theme is if we were able to get a home away from the beach, in other words, within about 2 blocks to 2 miles away, the prices go way down. If you're sort of in town and you can walk to the beach, that's a lot different than being right on the beach. So as long as she was open to that, we could probably flip our home here in Illinois to a home in town near the beach and a boat to start off with. Maybe not the houseboat or the yacht, but we could get started in a boat. So that way we're still near Chicago.
But would that allow us to get the kind of boat you would need to do the loop?
Maybe not initially, but I think that's every boater always wants to get a new boat or a new used boat, and then every few years they want to move up to the next one. So every musician wants a new guitar. Everybody that has a fairly new car, they want the next new model. So maybe that's possible, further along as retirement comes.
So it sounds like you would be willing to postpone the plans of getting that larger boat in order to just make the move to Michigan and kind of reestablish your guys' self there, and then in a couple years get on track. What are your thoughts?
I don't want Dad to have to wait for the boat he wants.
What are you willing to give up in order to give him the immediate satisfaction?
We would just get a smaller place or get a condo or where it would be farther from the water.
And I actually came to the self-realization, Liz, that during our recent trip to Florida and our boat ride, that I'm not sure how much time I could actually be comfortable spending on the water. It can feel a little closed in, a little claustrophobic, and even on a 42-foot boat that's almost big enough to be ocean going, it's still a relative small space when you're underneath in the kitchen or the V berth in the bedroom. Bathroom is small, and then you have the cockpit and the front deck on the outside of the boat, but it's not a lot of space. So I found myself really saying, can I really do this? So it was good, not only to get used to the area and see the sights, but our boat captain really did a great job of kind of pointing out reality. And there are some people that live in 25-foot sloop sailboats, and they just live there right on the water, and every time they leave that boat they have to take a dinghy to shore. But you have to be, in my opinion, a very special person to do that. Usually you're a single dweller. You don't have a family, maybe not even a significant, but even with a significant other, and even on a 42-foot boat, it's a little tight. And I found myself feeling a little claustrophobic.
So maybe it sounds like you've kind of in the past couple months had a little bit of a reality check as you went down to Florida, back in March, and are maybe reconsidering how big of a boat that you want, because of the claustrophobic factor or the price. You could use that deduction of getting a smaller boat and fulfilling one of Mom's dreams of having a nicer place near or on the water.
Yep.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think we have to first off, this is good discussion, and I think it gives more food for thought and a deeper understanding of both perspectives, and I think it's going to be a work in progress.
But I'm open to that situation, and this mediation is perfect because we hadn't really discussed this. So I wasn't sure how I felt about living on the water, but this last trip helped to clarify it. And I think over the next couple of years, unfortunately for our economy, there will be a lot of opportunities to relocate or buy new used boats. I think that those opportunities will present themselves, and so we have a little time to continue this conversation and sort of continue the journey.
Do you have anything else to add?
No?
So from what I've kind of gathered, your issue was, you've been living in this home for some time and you kind of wanted to pick it up and, explore some other avenues. And you, on the other hand, were really hoping that in pursuing his dream of the houseboat, you could still have that on land address. You guys have looked at cost and the vacation factor wearing off. You kind of had a realization recently that maybe you don't need or necessarily want as big of a boat as you thought, for a multitude of reasons: price, maintenance, getting the slip, giving up a little bit of that accessory stuff would definitely benefit you economically, and in turn you could cater to some of her desires, like having a house on land closer to the water, maybe 2 blocks versus 2 miles, within that kind of range. And you guys are in a great place because your common theme is happiness for one another, and that's a privilege, that you're in a position where you can look 5 years down the road and say, hey, I'm set up to be able to even invest in a boat and this luxurious dream in the place that you want, with the people that you want, creating your vision and your dream. So with that being said, I think that you guys have found some clarity and better understanding of where each of you guys stand. Is there anything else that you guys would like to add?
No, this was awesome. This was good.
Thank you for your time today.
Yeah,
Thank you. Nice job.
thanks. Okay, that's it.